Hello everyone and welcome to another video in this channel. Today we're gonna continue with our chest and well, where is our chest? There we go. So some of you mentioned that I missed the image last time, so let me show you where you can find the image real quick. If you go to our Discord channel, you're gonna find this one right here called resources, and this one will bring you to a Google Drive folder. And over here, there's this exercises folder, and as you can see, this is the helmet that we did a couple of sessions ago. I'm actually gonna create a new folder here. Let's call this helmet. There we go. All of these guys are gonna go right there, and let's create a new folder that's gonna be called chest. So inside of that new folder that I just mentioned, you are going to be able to find this treasure chest image that you can use to follow along on the exercise. So yeah, the link to the Discord is going to be on the description. You need to go into the Discord and then go into our resources to find this one right here. So this is where we left off. We have a very nice blocking for our element, and now we're going to start exploring some modeling tools that are going to allow us to create all of the different things. So let's start with some like tricky ones or some complicated ones. Whenever I try to model, sculpt, or do anything here inside of Maya, I always like to either go from the most difficult things to the easier things, or from the easier things to the most difficult things. In this case in particular, I think we're going to go from difficult to easy. Now, before we do that though, you can see that we have a very like disorganized thing right here. What ideally we would need to do is we need to grab everything, hit Shift and P to unparent every single element so that we have like individual objects, and we do need to rename them. So for instance, this one right here is going to be wood_lith. Also, make sure to delete history and freeze transformations so that all of the stuff is like super clean. This one's going to be called a wood base. And then for instance, this one's, we need to decide whether or not we want to bevel or do other things with them. For now, I'm going to show you a tool over here. You can click on this little icon and select a rename. I'm just going to call this metal frame and then underscore, and that's going to give me underscore 0, 1, 2, and 3. For now, this should be more than enough. Later on, we'll do something else. Now, one thing that's important here is I want to keep things a little bit more organized, and yes, we can do it with the outliner, but we also have this very cool thing called display layers. And one of the things that I could do, for instance, is I could grab my objects here on the lid side of things, create a new layer, and I'm going to call this a lith underscore layer. So that way, when I hit this V letter right there, I'm going to be able to turn it on and off. And I can do the exact same thing with this one right here. I'm going to create a new layer, and this one's going to be called a box layer. And that way, if I want to hide or show things, I can use these layers very, very easily, which is a really nice trick. So let's start with the lid right here, and I want to do this whole like lock system. And whenever we see things that look a little bit more complex, the question is always like, how are we going to do them, right? Like, how can we do a piece like this? And the answer is, I would say, rather simple. In this case, we need to understand that these are 3 different layers, actually like 4 different layers. We got this metal bit, this one right here, this one right here. And then these are like bolts, like holding everything together. There seems to be a like center piece right here. The key is supposed to go down here, but there's like some sort of hole. Maybe you need like one specific key, and then this opens the lock so that you can continue to open the whole thing. Doesn't really matter. So the way we're gonna do this is we're gonna be using the quadro tool to generate the silhouette of this thing. You can see it's slightly asymmetrical. We're gonna do it symmetrical. So I'm gonna start with a plane. I'm going to bring this plane up here to the center, and on the properties, I'm going to change the divisions to 1 so that we only have 1 division on this plane. I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees so that it's facing us, and I'm going to scale this down so that it's here on the top center, right around there. And the tool that I love to use for this kind of like elements in concepts and in weapons is the quadro tool. So I'm going to go to this quadro option right here, and I'm going to start creating the silhouette that goes around this whole thing. You can see it has a very soft round corner, except for this point where we have a sharp corner. Whenever you have a sharp corner, you usually want to leave the edge loop like open, so you don't want to close and continue the edge loop. We're going to leave it exactly like that. Let's add a couple more right here. There we go. And then from here, we keep going down. Now, I don't have the information, so I'm going to have to guesstimate or kind of like follow this sort of like shape that we have right here, which sounds like a round shape. It makes sense, to be honest. And you can see a very like sharp corner here on the bottom part as well. If we want this corner to be a little bit rounder, then in that case, we will need to continue the edge loop like this. Okay, so remember, if you want super sharp corners, then you usually leave the edge loop open. If you want soft round corners, you usually continue the edge loop and generate this sort of like line going around the whole thing. Now, this is kind of like doing retopology, and I always like doing this because it's kind of like a puzzle, right? Now on this hole, this one's gonna be quite important because at this hole, we're gonna be using a very simple technique. We want at least 4 sides. So that's gonna be 1, 2, 3, and 4. Because when we have 8 sides and we round them off, we're gonna have a really nice round, clean circle. So we're gonna just keep filling this in, and this is a question that I get asked all the time. It's like, how do I know if my topology is right? There's no topology police. Like, no one's gonna come to your house and be like, your computer is now arrested or whatever because you did not do topology properly. However, there are things that you need to look for. For instance, if you want an edge loop to flow nicely, like what we did over here, that's one thing that you should try to look for. Quads and triangles only. Do not use angons, even though they can be useful sometimes. They're not ideal. Another thing is try to keep the grid, as you can see here, going from top to bottom and left to right. That's usually another like good rule of thumb. If you need to simplify something for games, then you're probably gonna have a very low poly count. So for instance, here I have a decision to make, like, how do I get this to work? And just adding one extra line right there is more than enough. Yes, this increases the poly count a little bit because we now have a line that's going all the way around here. But if I wanted to simplify, I could just create a triangle and that's it. You can use a shift to relax your topology and make it a little bit cleaner. As long as you do not modify the border, you should be fine. And yeah, that's it. So this is the first piece. Now let's continue it to get like a final look for this one. And what we're going to do here is I'm going to select all of the vertex on the center line. I'm going to scale them with R, and with W and X, I'm going to line them up to the grid. Why? Because we're going to use, of course, our mirror function, shift and right click, to mirror this to the other side. Like, let me actually turn on my... Oh. What the hell? There we go. Let me turn on Karnak. Karnak is the little software that I use for keystrokes here inside of Maya and ZBrush. So we're going to use this one, mirror X negative. I always do this, merge vertices and automatic custom, like this things. It should like not give us any sort of like n-gons, but sometimes you will get an n-gon, unfortunately. In this case in particular, there doesn't seem to be one, so that's great. Now to make this circle a perfect circle, I'm just going to grab this whole thing and I'm just going to say edit mesh and circularize. Very cool tool here inside of Maya. And as you can see, we already have the general shape. It doesn't match perfectly over here because we were focusing on this side right here, but just like it's the same thing. So over here, I do want to have a little bit more curvature. So I'm going to turn on symmetry world X so that when I grab this edge right here, it moves on both sides and I don't have to like do a mirror again. And now let's give this thing some thickness. So I'm going to press Control E to extrude this. We're going to extrude it forward. I would say something like that is fine. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Now I'm going to grab the whole edge loops on both sides like that. And probably on this one right here as well. And I'm going to bevel. 2 segments and a small fraction, and that's going to give me a nice like crisp line on the front. If I want the same thing on the back, in this case I'm just going to use my cut tool and I'm going to add with control a nice little edge loop on the back. That's going to hold the back like tighter, and it's going to ensure that we like keep pretty much the same thickness for the whole thing. So there you go. As you can see with this, we got the metal bits ready, or the first metal bit ready right there. Now the second one, it's pretty much the exact same thing, but it's slightly different, right? Because of the what's the word? Of the shape. So here what I can do is I can actually grab this faces right here, say edit mesh and duplicate. There we go. And now this mesh right here, I'm just gonna hide it. We're gonna have this one right here. It's gonna be like right around here if I need to find it, right there. So this one right here, I'm gonna get rid of symmetry. Let's delete half of this. And from here, which just needs to be, because I want to make sure that this circle is as close as possible to the final circle, right? So from here, I'm going to, again, use my quad draw to build this new thing. And as you can see, this one does keep a very, like, nice and clean, like, silhouette going around. So it's this one right here, right here, right here, right here. I'm probably going to add an extra edge loop right there just to have a like, nicer, rounder edge. And we're going to go all the way over here. There we go. And now same thing. We just start filling in all of these elements and we complete our topology. Again, don't worry too much about topology. As long as it flows nicely, you're going to be in a good place. So for instance here, one thing that I want to do is instead of having these two guys going down, we can use a very like simple topology trick where this guy flows in like this. See that? So this point is going to be very important because it's a point that's sharing 3 edges, and it helps us like make this whole thing flow a little bit nicer. Same thing for this one. This one's going to be a star. Stars are very important as well because they can help us, again, minimize the amount of points that we have. And over here, probably the easiest solution is just add 1 point right there and do this one right here. So as you can see, this like make sure that we're not adding any unnecessary topology and everything is working nicely. Cool. So we'll just grab all of this vertex again, scale them in X, and we mirror to both sides. Now let's bring this other one back in because we need to make sure that the thicknesses are like similar. So I'm gonna Control E. We're gonna extrude this up. Oh, careful there. It seems to be some sort of, there's probably some like, oh, look at that. Okay, so when this happens, when the faces are not like perfectly aligned, it's just R. Just hit R and snap them on the Z axis, as you can see right there. And what that will do is it will flatten them out. If they're like opposite, like in this case, mesh display and reverse. And by doing that, we should have, oh, actually, I don't need to reverse. I just need to push them forward. So right around there. Perfect. Control E. Let's give it a little bit of thickness. Now they're inverted again, so mesh display, reverse. And this edge right here, it's a simple edge, same for this one, so I'm just gonna select it. Bevel, 2 segments, and a small fraction. So we get this sort of like round effect that we have right there. And similar to what we did on the other one, I'm gonna add an edge loop on the back side. So when we hit number 3, as you can see right there, everything matches perfectly. Look at that, beautiful. So this piece right here is actually gonna allow me to teach you guys a very important thing, which is a what's the word? Like a concept that I use frequently, which is called complexity out of simplicity. You don't need to do super complex things all the time. Sometimes by doing like this very simple things, you're going to be able to create a lot of shapes. And by creating layers with them, you can create something that looks very, very nice. So let's hide this one again one more time. Grab this one right here, and I'm going to duplicate and hide one of them. And then this second one, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete all of the faces right here. And I'm literally just going to move the vertex. All of this vertex right here, I'm gonna repurpose them to follow this other shape that we have here on the bottom part. This is something, again, very, very, very common in 3D. We want to work smart, not hard. Sometimes there will be things that we can just like manipulate, like this one right here, and it's gonna save us quite a bit of time. So if we bring this one back again, and this one we just mirror, of course, to the other side, as you can see, we're now gonna have all the 3 pieces that we have right here ready for our stuff. Where's the other one? Oh, wait a second. It was this one. So this one right here, of course, we're just gonna push forward a little bit. We might wanna, I'm gonna center the pivot point. Might wanna make this a little bit thinner right there. And let's just make sure that all of them are in smooth mode. And look at that, we got a very nice like element right there. And those borders, eventually, if we wanted to paint things like rust or just like a little bit of scratches and things like that, we're gonna be able to do it just fine. Now there's 2 more things right here. There's like this little button right here, this guy right here, and of course one of the important things is that we need to modify them so that they follow the curvature of the object, which I'm gonna show you how to do as soon as we get this right here. Now if you've been watching for the past 13 minutes and you're not subscribed to the channel and you like the content, please help us get to the next goal and subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna go over here. I'm gonna start with a cylinder. I'm gonna press the letter E, click, and I'm gonna turn on discrete rotate so I can like rotate these things a little bit faster. I'm gonna have this one right here. That's like the base of the like the brass like spheres or something. Let's make this a lot smaller. Oh, careful there. We don't wanna like flip the normals. So something like that. And I would imagine that this face right here, there's a shortcut here, Control and then F11. That's gonna select all of the faces. Control E then, and we can offset, and Control E again to push this in. I'm gonna grab all of these edges and just bevel them. We're doing self-division modeling, by the way. This is not for games, so it's not like super optimized. That's gonna be my effect. I think the what's the word? The offset was very small. Sorry. I blanked out right there. Let's go back a little bit. There we go. So Control E, offset. We can even like go here and make sure that we have the proper offset. It's quite big, so right around there. There we go. Control E, and then we push in. Now we grab all of this guys, and this guy's bevel, 2 segments, and there we go. This one, of course, we mirror to the other side, and we're gonna have the effect right there. And for the brass like details, it's just a sphere. However, one thing that I do recommend for this sphere, especially because later on when we go into texturing, I want to make sure that we have like clean UVs, is to make it face our way. So I'm going to go here. We can even press a V, which is snap to point, and we can snap them right there at the center of the cylinder. I'm going to flatten them out. And here's a small little trick. If we're not going to be using the faces on the back, it's a good idea to delete them, because by deleting the faces, we save texture space and poly counts as well. So it's just a good practice. And then we have another one very similar to this, guys, but it's a small one. So I'm going to select this too. I'm going to duplicate. Let me isolate this one. Delete those and delete those faces on each of the objects. And these two objects I'm going to combine into a single one. Now, if we go here, it should be fairly easy to get this into the center and just get it right there. I know it's not exactly the same as in the concept, but again, here's where reusing assets is actually really, really handy, because we're going to save ourselves quite a bit of time. So there we go. So we got the big piece right here. This whole object is looking good. However, of course, if we take a look at the lid, you're going to see that this object is not where it's supposed to be. So what we need to do is we need to move all of these things forward. I know that the base of this thing is going to be right there where the whole like lock opens. Seems to be a little bit higher. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to Control G to group them and center the pivot point of that group. I'm just going to scale it up a little bit, probably move it down a little bit as well, so that it like matches a little bit better with what we have here on the lid. Whenever you're transferring something from 2D to 3D, you're going to find this sort of things where things like don't perfectly match. And here's the trick. I'm going to grab the group. I'm going to go to Deform. I'm going to use a non-linear bend deformer. This is a little curve. And if we go to the curvature options over here and we middle mouse drag, we're going to be able to create a curvature like this. And then if we rotate that curve, as you can see, if we rotate it back, in this case 90 degrees, you can see that we should be able to find the exact sort of like effect right here. I'm going to go to the high bound, or actually to the low bound. I'm going to bring the low bound to 0 because I don't want to bend it on the lower section. I just want to bend it on the higher section. And then another thing we can do is we can actually move this thing down. Look at that. And we can find like the specific sort of like effect that we want. So let's go to the right view. I'm going to move this thing to the very bottom right here. There we go. To the very base. And then playing with the curvature, I'm going to try to fold this into the best, like the closest angle that we can, so that it matches the chest. And as you can see, this is what we get. Now, of course, the wood right here is not perfectly matched. So what can we do? I would suggest maybe going back to the curve, maybe not doing it so intense. So a little bit less intense, even if it's like slightly like moving up right here, that looks good. And then if we really, really, really want to fix those sort of like details right there, we can go to the individual elements, press the letter B in our keyboard, and then B and middle mouse button to make this a little bit bigger, and just push this in a little bit so that it like just like folds or goes around the object a little bit nicer. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And as you can see, that gives us a very nice detail. Just be careful here. Once you're done with the curvature, make sure to do a delete history so that the deformer is gone and it's no longer affecting our element. Now, as you can see right here, the wood planks do not have the hole that we would expect to see here going, well, maybe inside the barrel or something. I don't think we really need it. There's going to be shadow and we can just paint it black. But if you wanted to, you could extract this plank right here and do a little cut. I'm just going to show you real quick how that would be done. So I'm going to duplicate this one over here. Again, I'm not going to do it for my final one, but I just want to show you that it can be done. So if we double click this one, shift, double click, there we go. So this will be like our main plank. I'm gonna go with my cut tool. I'm gonna add one right there at the center and one right there at the center. And then I'm gonna add one like, all right, we can actually use offset edge loop, offset edge loop tools. There we go. So mesh tools, offset edge loop tool. Let's just offset this one right around there. And then another one right around there. You select this 4 ones, delete. You select the 4 ones on the back, delete, and then both of them, you just mesh or edit mesh, circularize. And of course, you bridge from one to the other and probably get them like a little bevel, right? So that's how we would do it. And then again, if you want to simplify, you can collapse all of these guys into like a single point. That's fine, but it's not gonna be a bother for us right now. So that's the main detail right there, my friends, and that's exactly the same thing that I'm gonna be doing for this part down here. Now, I do want to make this series as engaging and as cool as possible, but I also know that it could be a little bit boring to just watch me do all of the like different components, and most of the components are very simple. So here's what we're gonna do. Here's the deal. This is just the first modeling part. We're gonna have another modeling part where I'm gonna show you the whole lock mechanism so that you two can follow along. But in the off camera, and you're probably gonna see this in the render, I'm gonna be duplicating this little bolts right here. And to do those bolts, I'm just gonna use this sphere. But since we have a lot of spheres here on our chest, one of the things that we do want to have here is a low poly count for this particular elements. So the magic number is 8. 8 by 8, it's a perfectly good number for a circular element, because when we smooth, we get a nice like circular smooth effect without having to add too much effects here. So I'm gonna do this one right there, this one right there, this one right there, and in every single point where you see one of these guys, we're gonna have one of this. And of course, we're gonna do a mirror to the other side. Now, the other thing that I want to do right now, because I do think it's important, is one of these guys right here, one of the sort of like elements. Because some of you might think, oh, this is kind of like half a cylinder. And yes, half a cylinder will give you a nice result. But if you want an even cleaner topology, I recommend doing what we did here with the clean topology going around. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go to Mesh Tools, create polygon. I'm going to create one polygon right here. And then from this polygon, I'm going to do quad draw, and I'm going to draw 1, 2, 3. So that's 4 on one side, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 on the other side. You probably have seen this. I've seen this video a lot on YouTube. It's one of like the top 3D videos about like good topology, bad topology. This is the kind of topology that really, really sets a pro artist apart. So this thing right here, look at that. This distribution of polygons is going to look way, way, way cleaner and nicer than just like a half cylinder with a lot of points, because this is like true subdivision topology for our assets. So now the only thing we need to do here is bring this one to the front. Now this is not perfectly symmetrical, which I actually like, because I don't want my chest to be like perfectly symmetrical. I like having slight little differences here and there. So let's center the pivot point on this one. I'm going to bring it right here. As you can see, my chest seems to be a little bit lower than the concept, so I'm just going to like play a little bit with that. Lower this one, maybe even like push it out. I am gonna grab all of the vertices down here, snap them together, and then Control E and give them some nice thickness. I would say something like that should be good. Now for this one, we could use the same technique that we use for this one right here, or in this particular case, to be honest, I actually like having this like completely flat. So my advice for this particular piece is go to the vertex on the back and just push them back a little bit. And as you can see, this, thanks to the distribution that we created, is going to be a lot easier to do this sort of effect than if we had just like a point, right? Because moving the point would just create like some really, really weird things. So with this done, now the only thing I need to do, or the last thing that we need to do, just grab all of the corners right here, maybe bend this corners right here, bevel, 2 segments, and a small fraction. As you can see, when we smooth this out, we're gonna get a really nice, clean like effect right here. This, of course, is gonna be mirrored to the other side. Now, you can see that these ones are, they're like spheres that have like a little bit of a border or something. So I'm just gonna grab a sphere. I'm gonna rotate this around. Let's go to, in this case, I'm gonna do 12 because I don't wanna go that low poly. So 12 seems like a good number. This one's supposed to be like right around there. Size-wise, this seems to be like the right size. But what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna grab all of the faces on the back. Faces, all of this on the back. And I'm gonna snap them. And then this one right here, this face, I'm just gonna Control E and give it a little bit of an extrusion right there. And then this one, I'm gonna give it a bevel. And this one also a bevel. So that's gonna give it this sort of like effect right here. Crunch it up. And there we go. So this piece right here, this sort of like a copper piece, I'm going to be duplicating it quite a bit to create all of the different elements. For instance, this one we can also rotate around, push it down here, and recycle. Don't be afraid of recycling a lot of these pieces right here. It's very, very important that you do it, because otherwise we would spend a lot of time doing something that's pretty much the exact same topology, right? So there we go. Now, of course, I need to bring my lid and do some slight adjustments here on the element. There we go. And having this sort of like not perfect things, I always think it looks a lot better than super perfect elements. It gives it more realism, because in real life, especially like old things that were like pretty much handcrafted like this, guys, they were not as perfect. Like, it was very, very difficult for things to be this perfect. So it's a good idea that things are not exactly perfect. Let's just move the bevel right there. There's not a lot of overlap. Perfect. Cool. So yeah, that's it, my friends. With this, we have another step in this tutorial. I'm going to be mixing this series. We're going to keep it going for a while, don't worry. And I'm going to be showing you, of course, tips and tricks about new upcoming things. By the way, if you're watching until this point, again, thank you very much for being part of this amazing community. We have our Discord channel available. And one more thing, we're going to have a very special stream next week. Next week is my birthday. So there's going to be a little event, a little something, maybe a giveaway right there. So make sure to stay tuned. Go to Twitch and subscribe there, or follow to make sure that you get the notification when we go live. And remember that this week we're gonna have portfolio reviews. So if you haven't submitted your portfolio and you want me to take a look and give you advice, tips, and tricks, make sure to go to our Discord channel to the portfolio review for August, because we're gonna be having it at the end of this week. So yeah, that's pretty much it, my friends. Thank you very much for your support, and I'll be seeing you back on the next video. Bye bye.